What's up, guys? I'm Mike Ashworth, and today we are talking fishing rods, specifically the Cajun rod. A lot of you have asked, and here it is. Let's get started. Alright, guys, since the Houston Fishing Show, when I picked up this Cajun rod, this is the Cajun Coastal rod. A lot of you guys have been asking for reviews on this and general information on this rod. And I did show in that video the short demonstration of why I bought this rod at the Houston Fishing Show.
Got a good grip? You will need to put your other hand on that rod.
Take that so.
Okay? Give me a hand to put it up in here. You got a good grip.
It's like a GoPro, but he has.
That's incredible.
Loaded.
Oh, I know. It's a GoPro.
Put his teddy forward like a station on it.
That's about average for a fishing show. Is about 12 shows.
That's incredible.
It's about 30.
Now, sensitivity.
Yeah.
Hold the tip down like you're fishing. What do you feel?
Wow. Not worried about the hat as much as I like that rod.
What do you feel?
I can actually feel the, I guess the letters.
Are you sure there's no letters on that card? When you make your own blanks in the United States, you make a superior product.
For those of you that didn't catch that, when we were doing the test at the end, I could feel individual letters on the end of the rod, and I don't feel that with my fingers, which is amazing. Awesome rods.
All right, before we get into the Cajun rod, let's talk about fishing rods in general, the characteristics that everybody looks at when they're looking to buy a new rod. And that is the power, the strength of the rod, the sensitivity, the action, the castability, and then the overall look and appearance. So what are you looking for when you are looking to buy a new rod? I mean, what does that those power ratings, what do those sensitivity and action ratings actually mean? And how do they correlate to you? Well, there is a balance between power and sensitivity, or strength and action, basically. So when you have a rod that has more power, more strength, you generally lose sensitivity and action. And so when you go to the extreme side of things, for instance, this rod that has tons and tons of power, but next to no sensitivity at all. This rod, there's no need to have any sensitivity on it. And the reason is because this is made to catch gigantic fish. If I'm fishing from shoreline, this is made to really catch just big sharks. If I'm offshore, I'm looking to catch huge fish like amberjack and tuna and things like this. And I know that this rod will stand up to it. But I can't feel, there's no sensitivity, there's next to no bend in this at all. So a small fish you won't even feel hit this rod. But that's not important to me because I'm using huge bait on this, and when something does hit it, it's going to bend this rod completely over because it is going to be a massive, massive fish. Now, on the other side of that, when you're looking at rods that are extremely sensitive but have next to no power, why would you need that? Well, the reason that I use it, and a lot of people use that, is for bait fishing. When you're going offshore, you can get an extremely sensitive rod, put a sabiki rig on it, and catch tiny little bait fish that you wouldn't be able to feel on a normal rod. And a lot of people also use it inshore when they're catching smaller fish. But those are the extreme sides of your power and sensitivity ratings. However, every other rod kind of falls somewhere in the middle. Now, that balance between power and sensitivity on inshore rods like this is way, way more important because you're really fine-tuning what you like in a rod. And everybody's going to be different depending on what you're fishing for. All right, let's talk about Cajun rods. Now, the Cajun Rod Company is veteran-owned and operated, and as a veteran, I'm a huge fan of supporting veteran-owned and operated companies But at the end of the day, it comes down to the quality of the product. I'm not going to buy an inferior product just because it is better and owned and operated. Now this is the Cajun rod. Now all Cajun rods are rolled carbon fiber rather than graphite like a lot of your rod companies are. Now rolled carbon fiber makes this have reduced weight, increased strength, and sensitivity, which are all good things for inshore fishing. Now this is a 6'9" medium power fast action rod. This is the Cajun Coastal, which is the model of the Cajun rod. Now I know they make like 9 different models, and in the Cajun Coastal I think there's 8 different Cajun Coastal models. So depending on what you like. This one is a split grip, and the reason that I bought this rod specifically is because it has a lower reel seat. Now, the reason that's important to me is because I do a lot of wade fishing and I do a lot of kayak fishing, which with a lower reel seat, you can do a lot of casting just from your wrist rather than using your entire body. And the reason that's important is because when I'm wading and the water is up to here, generally your arms are out of the water and you need to be able to cast. And a lot of those casts are going to be straight from your wrist because you're not going to be able to throw your whole body into your cast. Same thing on a kayak when you're really limited on space. You really want to be able to cast with just using your wrist or very, very minimal arm movement. It makes it a lot easier. All right, let's talk about the power, the strength of this rod. I was very, very surprised at how strong and how powerful this rod is, being that it's so small and so lightweight. Now, I have quite a few videos now of me using this rod and catching things from 30-inch redfish to a 6-foot alligator gar, and this rod handled it with no problem. And I was actually really, really surprised at how well it handled those gigantic, strong fish. And this thing would bend over and you could just crank them in. The power on this, for being how small it is, for how lightweight it is incredible. I mean, you can really, really crank on this rod with really big fish, and you're just not going to have to worry about it breaking. This is an extremely, extremely strong rod for being a medium power rod. This well outperforms a lot of my medium heavy rods and even some of my heavy rods when it comes to power. All right, let's talk about sensitivity on this rod. Now, this rod is extremely sensitive. In fact, it's crazy how sensitive this is in comparison to how much power this has, because you generally don't find a rod that has extreme amounts of both. I will say that this is so incredibly sensitive that when you're fishing with it and you're reeling in a lure, if it hits anything, a rock, an oyster, or if just a fish swims by and hits your line, you're going to feel it. And so you got to really get used to what's actually a fish and what's not, because it is so incredibly sensitive. It really reacts more like a ultralight or a light action rod because it's so incredibly sensitive, which is a good thing. It does take a little bit getting used to, because I'm just not expecting to be able to feel that much on a fishing rod with this much power. All right, let's talk about castability, the ability to cast this rod. And this is probably the only aspect of this rod that doesn't outperform every one of my other rods. I have a Waterloo 7-foot inshore rod, and I can outcast this rod with that Waterloo pretty much every single time. Now, that is a 7-foot rod. This is a 6'9", so maybe that difference in length really is the difference in casting. I don't know. I don't know enough about what makes a rod cast better than another, other than length. Now, is that a deal breaker for me? No, not really, because I do a lot of fishing from a kayak, so I don't really need to cast very far when I'm on a kayak. I'm generally running through the channels and the bays and things like that, and in a kayak you can almost sneak up right on top of fish and they'll never know. You won't spook them. But when you're wade fishing, you do want to be able to cast further, because you're walking through the water and you will spook the fish if you get too close. So being able to cast far is a huge benefit. Now, the difference between that rod and this rod, when it comes to the actual distance in casting, you're probably looking at somewhere around that 10-foot range. So it's not huge, but it is noticeable. It is noticeably different. I would like to try this in maybe a 7-foot to see if that is the difference. But it doesn't cast short by any means. It's just, I have rods that will definitely cast further. Now, I would still choose this over those rods because the power and the sensitivity of this rod way outperforms the Waterloo and a lot of my other inshore rods. So I will take the shorter cast any day over a rod that performs better once the lure hits the water. So castability, I wish it did cast a little bit further, but it really doesn't bother me that much. All right, lastly, let's talk about the appearance and the overall composition of this rod. Now, these rods, they all have Fuji guides, which is kind of the standard when it comes to high-end rods. They're wrapped really well. Now, it is pretty bare and simple. They're all wrapped black, except for this one. This is the black and gold. Now, these two marks here, I actually put those on myself. I wrapped them. I've done some rod building in the past, and so I wrapped these, and I wish every rod came with these because these are measuring devices, and a lot of us wade fishermen use these, and so you can measure from this point, the guide seat, to here, and that's 15 inches. This is 20 inches, and that is a perfect measurement for trout and redfish. Now, I understand why a lot of rod companies don't do this, because depending on what state you're from or what you're fishing for, then you would really need to move these. But here in Texas, it's very, very common to have that 15 and 20 inch mark for your trout, redfish, flounder. I go ahead and just use the 15 mark, and those are really the main fish that I catch regularly. And so this is really nice when you don't want to carry around some kind of measuring device while you're wading. Now, when you're on a boat, you're on a kayak, you generally have something anyway, so you don't need this. But I do use this a lot. You can catch the fish, hold it up, and immediately know if it's legal or not. Everything else about this is really well put together. I do like the nice soft cork here. It's got the hook keeper here. I don't know what that's actually called, but that is nice to have. The seat is really, the real seat is very, very nice. The trigger on this feels great. I actually use 2 fingers when I'm casting or reeling, and it feels nice. The entire rod composition, it's very clean. It's not overly done. It's very simple, very plain, but it's really nice. It's precision. It's precision rod. And the price on the Cajun Coastal rods, I believe, is $169.99, which is kind of that midway point when you get into the higher end rods. Most of your higher end rods are somewhere in that $150 to $200, and then they go way higher than that. But it's pretty average, for such an exceptional rod. The price point is really nice. It's not bad at all. That's pretty normal, pretty standard. So, all right, my final thoughts on the Cajun rods, Cajun Coastal. I love this rod. Would I buy another one? Absolutely. It is the best inshore rod I've ever used, and I really try to make honest, truthful reviews about things. I couldn't find anything that I really dislike. In fact, the only drawback that I had is that it couldn't cast as far as some of my other rods, but that really wasn't even a big issue to me. I think the next rod, though, I do want to try their Revenant Elite series, which they make that rod in 6'10" and 7'2", I believe. And I really would like to try that 7'2" just to see if that would help with the casting, and I think it will. Now that Revenant Elite, they really claim that's the strongest rod you'll ever use. And if it's stronger than this and it's has the same sensitivity, I can imagine, I really would like to try that rod out. And I probably will. That will be my next rod purchase, is the Revenant Elite in that 7'2". But right now, I am super happy with this Cajun Coastal, and I would recommend it to anyone. Definitely go check them out. I'll leave a link to their website and all of their information below. All right, guys, I hope this video was informative and helped you if you are interested in the Cajun rods or just looking at new rods in general. I hope this gave you some good information to make a good decision on your next fishing rod. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, comment below, and I appreciate every one of you for watching. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.